Was it to tell me to hit record? Yeah. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. We have a lot of presentations tonight, so we'll get started on those shortly. But I do want to I want to share, of course. Got to always start with Blackboard so we know where we are. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we are 700. You're the first class in this particular cohort. So just call a couple of things to your attention. Want you to remember, we have here on the Blackboard shell the schedule of activities. Just calling your attention to a couple of things that need to be make sure we put out there. That's my mid-year evaluation I have to do for the School of Education. So just kind of reminding you, and remember that this shell or schedule of activities is really more of a kind of a timeline for you to kind of keep moving along so we don't get too far behind. And most of you are turning in stuff, so I really do appreciate that and having a chance to grade them. So tonight is Zoom session 2, and we're going to start with the presentations, and we're going to talk a little bit about leadership theory, should we have time. By now, you have probably started reading some of the chapters out of the Leadership Challenge.
Everything went out.
I'm sorry? Everybody go ahead and mute yourself. So that way when we get to, if you have a question though, just unmute and ask me. But that way we won't have any background noise. So just looking at the agenda, just kind of keep us on task. Just make sure you're kind of following along and doing these kinds of things. Remember, there are no absolute due dates except for that OPD, which is due on April the 29th, and that there are really a lot of things that we can do along the way, but try to keep up so we don't get too far behind. We'll have another Zoom session next week on the 12th, exactly from today, and then after that, our next face-to-face will be on March the 2nd and the 3rd, and we'll be meeting back at Fayetteville Christian School. They may have us in a different room because the desks were not as conducive to adults, but we don't know. They're gonna be trying to work on something for that. But it will be there, and I will meet you at the front door at 9 or 8:30. That's right. We changed our time to 8:30, didn't we? Both Saturday and Sunday. All right. So that's the schedule, kind of the weekly schedule. Let me go back to. Oh, that's not you. Some other things that you may want to look at here and keep a board. Of course, your discussion board is where you're going to find the types of discussions or things that you need to put onto the board grade point for me to grade. Most of you have already started these and doing a great job on them, so just keep that up. Remember, those are all you download them here. They go to Grade Center, and I'll put a grade on them. The other things you need to remind yourself of is the course assessments. I don't think I've gotten any yet, any of the organizational. Well, here's where your PowerPoint presentations go. So there will be 5 of you tonight that will go ahead and enter your PowerPoint presentation right here after you finish. You'll go under course assessments and you'll enter it under PowerPoint presentation 1. When you start on your ODP, and I think I got someone today. Josh, was it you? Not Josh. Who sent me? Oh, I'm sorry. That was another class. I'm confusing. I'm confusing myself. Not to mention, I hope not you all. But don't forget, when you start working on that ODP, there is some guidance for you here under ODP development plan. I have some guidance for parts A and part B. There's a sample of the full document itself and a sample of the PowerPoint that's due as well. So be looking at that guidance. If you have not already identified a project that you want to work on, if you want to shoot me an email, do it to my Gardner Webb email. If you want to say, hey, Steve, I want to work on this, or this is kind of what I'm thinking. If you want to do that before you get started, if not, go ahead and get started working on that, putting together that team and start working on the ODP. I just want to remind you about the ODP Part A. This does require, looking at the guidance, This does require that you start looking at your mission vision and you start identifying with the superintendent and having that conversation with what organizational plan you're going to be looking at. And you need to go ahead and start identifying people that will probably serve on your team when you start looking at the plan. I think someone did, and God, my memory's so bad. This is what happens when you get old, folks. I hate to tell you. But when you start thinking about your plan, again, shoot it to me if you want some guidance on it or if you want to know if this is okay. But I think most of you already have something in mind, so that's great. All right, so there's where your ODP. There are A, B, C, D, E parts to that. There's 6 parts to the ODP, so make sure you start looking at that as well. I will unlock next week. I'll unlock part C and D, so you can see what that entails. It's not a long document, and I don't want you to be thinking that this is anything more than, by the time all the 6 pieces go together, it will be about a 20-page deal. So don't fret too much on it. And it will be the basis of some other things that you use in the EDLS program. All right. So the other thing is tonight, our Zoom session 2, just reminding you, let me go back. Zoom session 1, just remind you that whenever I have a Zoom session, somewhere on that week, you'll see where we have if you want to watch yourself, there's a Zoom session video. This is the video from last week if you want to go back and look at that. But I always will post the Zoom session video probably the next day after the session, and I'll send you an email with that. All right, so tonight, Zoom session 2, we're going to spend a little time. Most of you have already done your philosophy of education, and what I really like for this and I think this is something that I've commented to a couple of you, is I want your philosophy. You may have a philosophy that's a well-known philosophy or something that someone else has said, but internalize it and make it something personal for yourself. We're going to talk a little bit about the lessons of the mental models, but I'm going to wait till the end in case we have a chance to do that. All right. Some of these other things are locked. That's because I used it at another class. If you don't see it, don't worry about it. Okay. The other thing is the reports. Tonight we will have chapter or parts, not even chapter, part 2, 3, 4, 5 of Start with Why and 6, and then we will have the model leader. So you actually have 6 people who will be presenting tonight. So now here's the way I want you to do your presentation. So for the 6 of you who are the guinea pigs tonight, the rest of you can learn from this because you'll have 3 opportunities to do this. But I'm going to turn the screen over to you, and Melody, you're going to be first. I'm going to turn the screen over to you, and then you will be teaching the class. And that means that there's an expectation of not only of sharing the information, but engaging the class. And you can make this easier for your classmates by answering questions, by engaging with the presenter, because this is the part of the entire grade for the PowerPoint, is how well you engage the class and the class engages with you. So please help your classmates, ask those questions, share those comments, and just realize too that your classmate read this chapter. That does not mean that they are an expert on everything within that chapter, but they can share their personal experience, or they can share what they believe that to be. I'm not an expert. I've read the book just like you, but that doesn't make me an expert. So in the presentations, listen very carefully. Presenters, occasionally stop, engage the class, see if there's any questions, see if there's anything that needs collaboration. Also, stop at certain points and ask questions as if you were conducting a class. You have 15 to 20 minutes for this presentation. Once you are done, if you are comfortable with your PowerPoint presentation, go to Course Assessments and go ahead and download it under PowerPoint 1. But if you want to take it tonight and play with it a little bit more, maybe you see something, or maybe somebody asks a question and it needs to be modified a little bit, those can be downloaded whenever, but you do need to download them for that grade. So are there any questions about the expectations for the presenters or the expectations for the those of you who are participants? The one thing I want you to do, if you are the presenter, is very quickly up front present the ground rules for your classmates. If you don't mind being interrupted, or if you would like for them to wait till the end, you set the ground rules for the participants and how much and when and where they come in on your presentation. So you are the teacher, that you set the ground rules for that, and you let your classmates know. And truly, I'm looking for that engagement, as well as you have a basic understanding of the chapter that you read and the chapter that you are probably more of an expert than anyone else in the class about. So is there any questions about how we do our presentation? So just to remind you, tonight we have Start With Why. We'll finish up that particular book, and I really like that book. And then we start with the truths, and I'm really interested to see how you're going to handle these. And we will have 6 of those next week. We're also going to have a model leader, and Lakeisha has turned in. I've seen her PowerPoint. I think you're going to enjoy it. She's also one of my heroes, Lakeisha. So, so that's the next Zoom session. That's next week. Any questions? And then, of course, we break until March, until we have our next weekend together. All right. So I need to stop sharing.
I have a quick question.
Okay.
And I'm sorry if I did this wrong. When I was looking at this to do my chapters, it says that chapter 6. So I did only chapter 6. Was I supposed to do part 6 of Start With Why, or was it just one chapter?
Start With Why has parts. Tell me what you did, and I can tell you if that's kind of. Let me get.
Because the way it's written on the schedule says chapter, so I guess I should have asked. I did chapter 6, not part 6. So if that was what it's supposed to be, then I'm wrong. Not complete.
Anyone else? Okay. Let me find my book. Where's my Start With Why?
I did chapter 3 also. I didn't do part 3.
I did chapter 4. I didn't do part 4. Sorry.
Me, yeah, I got that misunderstood.
All right. Well, that means that I did not explain it well. Where's my book? Oh, here it is. So tell me tell me the difference between chapters. Oh, under part 2, there's a chapter 3, 4, and 5. Is that what you did?
Yes.
Oh, this should be interesting then. All right. So, Melody, what did you do?
Hello. Oh, I did the whole of part 2.
All right. So we'll mark that one off. So, did anybody do chapter 3, 4, or 5?
I did chapter 3.
Okay.
I did chapter 4.
Anybody do chapter 5?
I did part 5. Yeah, I did part 5.
Part 5. Did anyone do part 3? So you did part 5. Anybody do part 6?
I did chapter 6.
Chapter 6. So we will not have part 3 tonight. We will not have part 4 and part 6. So when we get to that, we're going to let you present, because it was my fault for the confusion. But I would like for you, those of you, to go back and look at the parts and try to become experts on them. My fault. I need to change that, because I'm pretty sure. What do I have here? I have chapter, don't I? Yep. So that was my fault. Gosh. All right. And I was so looking forward to your presentations on parts.
I'm sorry.
No, it's my fault. So I will make sure, because this really does need to say part instead of chapter. Okay. All right. Well, Melody, you start us.
All right.
You need to hit share.
Oh, okay.
Do you see it down here at the bottom?
Yes, I just hit share.
Well, wait a minute. I need to. Yep. Let me make sure I'm not sharing. I'm not sharing. So if you hit share, you should come up.
What's wrong, Mo?
Nothing big.
Did you double click on it? Have you froze? You froze? Melody, are you frozen like that, or? All right. We lost Melody. Lakeisha. No, Crystal.
Uh-huh.
For some reason, I have you on the main screen. Can you, do you have the share button?
Yes.
Can you click on it?
Okay. Okay.
Where did Melody go? I tell you what, while we're waiting for Melody, Sabrina, do you want to go ahead with yours?
Sure.
Go ahead and hit share or share screen.
Oops. Share.
Mm-hmm.
Can we see it?
Yes.
Okay, good.
All
So
right, yeah. Go ahead.
I just did chapter 3, the golden circle, not part 3.
That's all right.
So it's somewhat extensive on chapter 3. I have some questions as I go through the PowerPoint. So when the questions come up, if you would kindly respond, that would be most appreciated. So it's chapter 3, the golden circle. The key quote that I had were, there are few leaders who choose to inspire rather than manipulate in order to motivate people. So that was in reference to page 37. I think that is key, that what we do every day, we choose to inspire no matter where we are in the building in our very busy days. So I'm not sure if all of you saw the super quick version of the Golden Circle, Why to Inspire. It's about 2 minutes and 50 seconds. Does anyone need to see it again from that first week that we saw the video? Do we need a refresher?
Probably not.
Okay, good. So the reference of the golden circle was the why, how, and the what. And I pulled this from Tools Hero so that we can understand, as educators coming from not only business, as he references, about why we do it, how we do it, and what we do within that golden circle. So the why, how, and what, when Simon Sinek found that most companies work from the outside in, it's from what we choose to question. And I'm sorry, because the video is cutting my verbiage off. To understand the golden circle, you need to understand what it entails. So the what ring represents the products or services a company sells. A how is the explanation of what the company does in the ring of the circle, and the why is what the company believes in, and it's not about making the profit, therefore inspired by influential companies that can communicate from inside out rather than outside in. So what we're doing is we appeal to the customer and not so much a customer as our students, and I'll transition to that in a minute. He obviously used the example of the Apple computer. So he started with the why as the center and saying that they communicate their vision to their potential buyers, and how they proceed to question their potential buyers with the eye-catching design and what it's used. The what is that they make the computers. So we argue that the customer does not buy the products because of what the company does, but because what they do to it, as well as their influential structures. So what I wanted to talk about is, what school project have you led with what first? And what school project have you led with why first? And how did you see the difference? So can we discuss, what have you had as a school project that you led with what first? And how did it go? Can anyone answer that?
Why don't you do your example first, and that way people can be thinking about another example, because you already have one up there for us.
Yes. So
and
my
Melody,
first.
we're going to come back.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Sabrina.
So my example would be something that isn't a why first, that's just a functional duty, would be your AM PM monitoring duty. Excuse the spelling, I have to correct that. So if someone can give me an example of how you led with what first. instead of the why.
Okay, so what do you mean by, when you use that example, what makes that a what first?
Because it's not calculated to have buy-in from a staff member or employees or a group. So if you have a school project and you just said you're assigned to duty, instead of why do we have to have safety and supervision in the courtyard, what would be an example of a school project that you just said, let's get it done, and not explain the why?
So that may be a principal saying, we're going to do it this way.
I would say something like a testing schedule when you know it has to be done. It's kind of, this is how it is to make sure that
Yes,
we need to get done.
very good.
Sabrina, I remember about, oh Lord, about 8 years ago or so, I don't know if it's been that long, when Common Core first came about, I remember my principal coming into my classroom and saying, I'm sending you to be our Common Core rep. And I'm just like, what in the world is that? But because he said, this is where I'm sending you, I was going to conferences. I had no idea what was going on. And I felt like I was there. Everyone else probably knew what was going on. And I just kind of felt like I was just awkwardly placed there. So I couldn't sell Common Core. Not that I had to sell it. It was just something that we had to do. But I really couldn't sell it the way I wanted to the teachers to get that buy-in, because I had no understanding of the purpose, the reason why I was even there, because I didn't choose it. I was told. I was voluntold.
That's it. Exactly. Anyone else? So my other example would be the why first. So what we're looking at is why students need credentials in career and technical education. So we're going to bring the staff in. We're going to do an extensive presentation about every student should have at least one career and technical education certification, like ServSafe and culinary, or welding, making sure they can do arc or MIG or TIG welding. So that would be an example of explaining to them as a collaborative group within a small PLC, within a small group, why are we doing this as a project? We're doing this for career, college, and life ready. So can anyone share an example of why the whole Simon Sinek why about a project you've presented that went well because you led with the why first?
I would say implementing one-to-one.
Okay.
How would that be so?
You know, what we did first is try to get buy-in from the teachers that one-to-one was a direction to go, how useful it would be for the students, resources that would be available, and then we move forward from there in terms of getting permission and also getting a request and approval from the district to pursue one-to-one.
Okay, let me ask you, Craig, because this is something that's come up before too, or someone else has asked me. For your, and I'm assuming you're talking about a district one-on-one initiative?
Right.
Who was it that first said we're going to do a one-on-one?
A one-to-one, I started initially saying we're going to pursue it, but I had to get buy-in from the staff to actually present it to Dr. Bridges.
So it's a school initiative that you
Correct.
initiated. Okay,
Correct.
and did the idea come from you during a conference, or you came back from it, or you heard from another principal or someone who has this great model? I guess I guess the question is, where did the idea originate from? From you, because you're considered the top,
Right.
or from your staff, which is considered below the line?
Well, I would say the idea originated with me going to a conference in Richland. They're a one-to-one school district, and so they have a summer conference where they bring together other districts that are also one-to-one, and they have a discussion on how you can implement this model, how well it works with your students, the benefits, and they just have a ton of sessions that from SPED to EL students, just a ton of opportunity there for you to explore. So I took that information, brought it back to the staff, and we went from there.
Okay. All right. Because most efforts to start one-on-ones do start above the line.
Mm-hmm.
It is rare that, and although I know teachers probably don't feel empowered enough to do this, but it is rare that a one-to-one or one-to-one starts below that line and teachers rise to say, we need this. Now, teachers will say we need technology.
Correct.
Most one-to-ones do start above the line, and that's, I have always heard that you should not buy a single computer until you have buy-in from your staff.
Exactly. Dr. Bridges was very adamant about that we had to have that at least 98% buy-in from your staff before we can proceed further.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you. Sorry, Sabrina.
That's okay. So in reference, since I concentrated just on one chapter, it's somewhat detailed. I referenced the Golden Circle of Education as to why we provide students with equal access to 21st century skills, how we go about it within our PLCs, what standards that we use to use curriculum resources and school and cultural resources. Again, always striving to seek a clarity as we're doing this.
I like your personal example in education. That's well thought out.
Thank you. That was from a module in California.
I was giving you all the credit for it.
No, I did a lot of research because it was one chapter. So what do you think? What are your success factors for good leadership? So I talked about being data-driven and reflecting on the why. And because we're so diligent in everything we do all day and we're pulled in so many directions, how do we essentially reflect on this why so that we are better leaders, we are better reflective thinkers, and we apply it in a resourceful manner that keeps us productive and doesn't frustrate staff? So can someone share what your success factors are for good leadership?
I'd say alignment to the mission.
Okay.
I think good leadership is always going to be focused on that mission. And even though it might not always look at every turn like everything is going toward that, in the end, you see that it finally does.
Okay. Anyone else? I have a gnat.
I would say that you have to have a keen awareness of yourself, being able to acknowledge what not only what your strengths are, but also areas where you can improve. I think you have to know, what you're good at and what areas where you might need to grow or need other people on your team to push you or challenge you or to support you.
Right. And then in chapter 5, it talks about the clarity, discipline, and consistency. And the biggest thing you'll hear teachers say to us is every administrative discipline is differently. It's so inconsistent. So I think it's important as a leader to be consistent. On the other question is, how do you apply the Golden Circle on a daily basis in your school to inspire? So I just wanted us to take a moment to think about how we inspire others. Because I have such a large career and technical education department, I take it on myself to quite often say, why are you required to look at your credential certifications and plan for next fall when it's spring and we just started spring semester? So I try to inspire them with little luncheon meetings, little get-togethers in the morning, little thank yous on their desk. So I wanted to take a moment for us to reflect on a daily basis, how do you inspire in your school? Anyone?
So we have a relatively new initiative that we put in place this year based on some of our school improvement goals, and it was driven actually by parent feedback. We have a really transient student population because we're located just outside of Fort Bragg. And one of our major contributors to our population is a huge military housing area. And we were discovering that a lot of our students who were new to the school, everybody does open house night at the beginning of the year. Everyone does that. We were already focusing on transitioning our 8th graders up into the high school. Where we were lacking was in creating a transition plan for students who were new to the school at any time and at any grade level. So we began this initiative to create this big transition plan. We have buddies for students, and we make sure that students are escorted out to their own buses every day for the first week. We have 40 buses. We have 1,500 students riding them. So that's one of the things that we're doing right now to inspire, because what it does is it inspires our students to know that they are, from day one, members of our school. They're part of our school community. And it inspires our parents to know that we really do care about making sure that their students feel safe and comfortable in their new surrounding.
Very nice. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to move on. So why, when an organization articulates their why and we believe it, we go above and beyond, and including their offerings in our lives. We embrace their beliefs not because they're necessarily better, but they represent the values that are important to us. They make us feel as though we belong, and these organizations are the ones that create a loyal fan base. Obviously, they did an example of the Harley-Davidson motorcycles and the Apple computers. So not only was not the only way, just one way, came from page 50. So when the why goes fuzzy, it becomes much more difficult to maintain growth, loyalty, inspiration that help drive the organizational success. So the examples they gave were railroads, publishing, and TV industries, and the examples of Gateway and Dell computers. So when the why goes fuzzy in education, why we did start doing what we're doing in the first place, and what we can do to bring our causes to life, considering all the technologies and marketing opportunities, we get blurred as we get into this time of the year. So how would we apply the golden circle? How would we take our data? So that's what I was reflecting on, and I wanted your feedback on. How will we take this data that we get after semester one and become why driven for teachers that may feel like when spring break? Does anyone have any ideas they want to share?
I would say have authentic conversations with your staff. And what I mean by that is sometimes you have to have tough but courageous conversations and saying what works, what does not work. Also encourage them to take some risks to kind of support gain, because a lot of this with the business world is about taking risks. And as educators, we are less likely to take risks because we feel that the consequences could be so great, or will be so great, to where, you know, it ruins your career or you can't recover from it. But sometimes it is important to take a calculated risk if it means that you get progress with students having growth.
Excellent point. Thank you for sharing. So reflections from my professional and personal life is I believe in strategic leadership and the collaborative planning, the design process, and STEM development. So that's what I'll be focusing on in my development plan is STEM and bringing all subgroups into STEM. The blended learning using Chromebooks, MTSS and positive behavior interventions, and listening carefully and valuing opinions and feedback for individual growth.
Okay, are you saying that these are your whys?
Yes, they are my whys. And I'll put that in there. Anyone would like to share their whys, or at least one of their whys? Thinking? It's a little for 6 o'clock. What? Go ahead, Matt.
I just think my whys, and it was kind of like cliche, but really just like the students and like the kids, like that's kind of like the daily focus every single day where I can just wake up and continue to go hard and everything, just because, you know, you have students out here that, you know, you're just trying to grow and support. So, yeah.
Great. Thanks for sharing. So my leadership takeaways is we are not managers, we are leaders, and we have to remind ourselves of that. Why? Because our students need us for college, career, and life success, and we hire to build capacity and to grow each teacher into a leader or follower based on what they choose to be in their role, and we listen to understand each situation.
All right, let me just stop you and ask you. I love this quote up here that you've got, and so please, everybody, and I'll do this, and I apologize. It's just what I do. You know, the great takeaway here is, and looking at his quote, have you ever worked for someone who you would follow them to the ends of the earth? If you would believe, you would sweat blood and tears for that person?
Absolutely. That would be our associate superintendent. Roger Edwards was the principal here, and he was promoted to associate superintendent. He hired me.
Sabrina, let me ask you then, why? What is it about Roger that, well, I mean, if he got up and moved over to the mountains of North Carolina and offered you a job, would you follow him?
I would consider it, absolutely, because he was always available to me. He always presented me with the why. So if I would ask him, why was the student suspended a certain amount of days? Why would the student be sent to an alternative school? He was very clear with his explanations, very patient, very succinct.
Okay, but the why is, you know, when you're talking about the broader question of why is a question, but when you think of the why, capital Y, capital W, you know, it's really about what motivates and what drives. So what would you say was about Roger that made him someone that you, I mean, because that's a lot, blood, sweat, and tears.
I would aspire to have his wisdom because I always try to seek people that.
Related to the why. What is it? What is his why that you are so, you're so willing to blood, sweat, and tears? What's his why?
His why is simplicity and trust. So when I knew he trusted me, he developed my why that I would be trusting and clarified. So that why led that progression.
His why is the reason he exists, the reason he's an assistant superintendent, or the reason he was a principal. What was exactly? Because the concept of why is not easy to grasp. And if I were to ask you, each and every one of you right now, to tell me what your why is, you might come up with, and Matt, I don't mean anything by this, but you might come up with your why being it's for the kids. It's all about the kids. And yes, that is a strong why that should be on your list as an educator. If you're in this field and that why it does not come up here someplace, the safety and security and the education of all children, that's a problem, and you don't need to be in this field. And you certainly don't need to move up in administration with it.
Right.
So your why could be a combination of things. So Matt is right. The kids, to see them develop, to see them grow, to see them have the potential, that's a strong why.
Right.
So what was Roger's why? Was it that, or was it what else? I guess I'm asking, what else can be your why?
His why was simplicity. Simplicity for everyone. Simplicity for the students, the staff, and to just be a trusting.
Okay, and I'm trying to put that into a why, because simplicity is a trait. How would that be that why for him, though? Anybody have any ideas? Because I see what you're saying. And
I have one. I can share a story. The person that I kind of model is Dr. Chavis. He actually just won Principal of the Year for Wake County, and like his why was like equity, and so he really engulfed himself in equity like through and throughout. So not only within like education, but also without. Like, so when it came to attend marches about whether it was about African Americans, whether it was about the LGBT, but he was always there because he engulfed everything that he spoke about. But then not only that, he brought it within his school too, with bringing leaders in and just framing his whole framework around education was always around equity. But he really, like, I don't even know how to explain it. Like, he was so into it that he really brought in everybody else into it. Like, he came into a new school and his whole model was equity. He created an equity team. He had like the whole staff going to write equity. And it's like, after a while, like, you really start to believe into it, even if you didn't initially have it. Like, if equity wasn't your initial focus and you just felt like, okay, I'm just focused on these students, he made you look at it in a different way that was like, that is still part of equity. That's a part of the overall goal, but it's just a different, like, one strand of it.
That's an excellent example. Equity is a strong why, and it should motivate, and it motivates us too. It may not be our strongest why, as it was for that particular principal. What other concepts are whys? Your why?
I would say relationships is another concept of why.
All right, you've got to qualify relationships.
I would say when you talk about relationships, I think about the people that I've encountered, or as I'm working with and developing relationships with my students or the teachers I'm supervising. For me, it goes back to maybe personal experience of being that kid growing up poor in a rural area, not really having an advocate there for me, but then having one or two advocates along the way. And those are individuals that you trust, you believe in. Even I think about my superintendent when I was in high school, Paul Shaw. And I think about the simple things that he did to develop relationships in that small town, from the handwritten notes that he'd write to students and say, you know, you did a great job at a band competition, or you did a great job at a track meet. It's about letting individuals know you care, letting them know they can trust you, and also knowing where you stand with them. I think about Bill Kaysen, was another superintendent I worked for. every day of the week, I knew exactly where I stood with him. And that meant something to me as a person. Whatever feedback I got from him, it was straightforward, it was authentic. You just know where you stand with those types of people. And I think it's about building that. It's like a reputation. You know, Apple has great products, and we talked about some of these other, Dell, some of the other folks, but they morph and they change over time. I think Apple kind of stayed the course, but even with these people, your relationship kind of grows and they change over time, and they make the necessary adjustments.
Okay. Craig, I'm gonna come back to you on that because I do want you to refine your term relationship.
Okay.
Because it's really probably, you're talking about the way I read it, and I may be misreading completely what you're saying, is more of an advocacy.
Correct.
Because that's what I'm hearing you say, is you've had advocates along the way. And I may be putting words in your mouth, so I don't want to do that. But relationship
no, I'd say that.
Is a hard why to define unless you kind of give it a little bit more definition. So think on that a little bit, but I like where you're going.
Okay.
I'm slowing down, Sabrina, so I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No,
To all of them, though, I'm sorry.
if I would define the why, it was because he knew how. No matter what it was, he knew how. It wasn't an emotion. He knew the why, the what, and the how in any situation. So there wasn't emotion. It was just a simplistic trust that I can go back to him. He answers my phone calls. He believes in everything I say, but then gives me critical feedback. So it's because I can go back and just say, well, how did this happen and why? So it's
okay.
We're trusted.
Right. Go ahead. I'm slowing you down.
No, that's okay. So I think that's my last slide.
All right. Any questions for Sabrina? All right, Melody, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to let Angela go next, and she's going to talk about chapter 4. She's excited about it already, I can tell.
Do I stop?
And then, Melody, I'm going to let you come back, and since they will cover basically part 3 and 4, we'll let you kind of concentrate on chapter 2. So you may want to go back and look at whatever's in your slide about chapter 2, and then if you want to very quickly go through the parts about 3 and 4. Is that okay? And then we will go to part 4. I think, Angela, you did all of part 4. Is that what I? No, I'm not. That's not right, Teresa. Crystal, you did all of part 5. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. So we'll come to you next. And then, Labette, you did chapter 6. So we'll come to chapter 6, I believe, is a part of part 3, which we don't have any representation on. So that'd be good. And then we'll have Lakeisha do her presentation. So with that said, Angela, it is yours if you will share with us.
Okay, I hope I'm doing this correctly.
You got it.
All right.
And I love Dr. Seuss. I can tell you now, anything with Dr. Seuss already is 100.
Well, I apologize for stepping in your lane, Melanie. I really misunderstood, and I really feel bad about it, Dr. Stone, because I wanted to present what you wanted on tonight. So, nevertheless, I started with chapter 4. It says, this is not opinion, this is biology, and I really did enjoy this chapter. I do not like reading aloud, so I want someone to read this for me. The Desire to Fit In is what this is called, and this is the excerpt from one of Dr. Seuss' books about Sneetches.
I'll go ahead and read it because it was it's in my presentation too. So,
yes.
Okay, now the star-bellied Sneetches had bellies with stars. The plain-bellied Sneetches had none upon thars. Those stars weren't so big, they were really so small, you might think such a thing wouldn't matter at all. Then quickly Sylvester McMonkey McBean put together a very peculiar machine. And he said, you want stars like a star-bellied Sneetch? My friends, you can have them for $3 each.
Thank you so much. So
that's awesome.
So what's happening here is there's two Sneetches. One has a star, the other one does not have a star. There wasn't anything so great about the star, but because the Sneetch had the star, the one without it wanted it. So it desired to fit in. So the first thing I would like to do, just to start us out, is I want somebody to give an example of a leader or someone who just they desire to be a part of. They have the need to feel like they belong. It could be you. It could be a leader. It could be somebody at your school. It could be a teacher. But can someone give me an example of a time that they feel the need to belong, or they experienced somebody or witnessed someone that just wanted to belong? I give you time to think.
Well, I mean, my first thought pattern as I think about the students, like, working in a high school, I just think about how kids are so, they're like so into being a part of a group, or even if it means them going against things they believe in or dressing a certain type of way. So, I mean, I see it every day in school.
Very good example. I was thinking along the same lines about that transfer student, that student who transferred in who did not know anybody. And that was my situation my freshman year in high school. I transferred in, had no idea who anyone was, and I just wanted to fit in. I wanted to feel the need to belong, be a part of. What about that first year teacher? What about that BT who, starting their brand new career? I see you shaking your head, Washington. You want to chime in on that?
I was thinking about teachers, and one thing I talk with my teachers about is peer pressure from each other, because there's often times where if a teacher is doing something extraordinary, out of the box, a STEM lesson that it takes some time with planning, preparation. Well, this teacher's doing this, but you've got this 30-year veteran, or you may have a person who's only been teaching 5 years. They don't want to put that time in to make a lesson wonderful, great, and for the kids to have a meaningful experience. And so when that teacher goes over and beyond, you'll turn around and have peer pressure from their peers saying, why do you have to do so much? Why don't you pull back? You don't have to let him know you're doing this. Why is it necessary for you to do all that? Just keep it basic. Stand up there, stand, deliver, call it a day. And I just think that peer pressure exists right there in buildings every day with teachers.
I want to add to what Craig was saying, because we experience this a lot, especially when you have a large staff. It's that spread of negativity. It takes one negative Nelly, and they're always looking for somebody to grasp onto, and they almost always will go for those new teachers. And those new teachers want to belong. They want to fit in, and it's really scary sometimes to watch, real potential turn that negative side.
I agree with you both. And, so new teachers come in, they're on fire, they're excited, they're willing to do anything. And sometimes you are right, Suzanne, the negative Nancy's will try to grab them and convert them to their ways, rather than, trying to encourage them and inspire them. And there's a lot of talk in our text about manipulation versus inspiration. Okay, so the next slide, I have a couple of quotes here. Okay, the need to belong. On page 53, it says, when we feel like we belong, we feel connected and we feel safe. Another quote says, our desire to feel like we belong is so powerful that we will go great lengths, do irrational things, and often spend money to get that feeling. Another quote says, we are drawn to leaders and organizations that are good at communicating what they believe. And the last quote said, those whom we consider great leaders all have an ability to draw us close and to command our loyalty. I want to give you a couple of seconds to look at those 4 quotes. And I would love for somebody to give me feedback on one of those quotes.
Well, Angela, I was looking at the third bullet. We are drawn to leaders and organizations that are good at communicating what they believe. And one of the things that I have found in the principalship and now moving to the district office is communication is the key to everything. I think about how many times we misinterpret something, a memo or a text or something, whatever mode that we're communicating in. And so it's important to make sure that your communications are clear, and that going back to, I just believe in being true to yourself and being able to communicate your purpose in the organization, which is hopefully shared with the purpose of the organization, to be able to communicate that why in everything that you do every day. So just making sure your message clearly communicates your why, your purpose.
Thank you so much, Melody.
Angela, I'm looking at that fourth quote, especially the part about the fact that great leaders command our loyalty, because there's such a difference between commanding loyalty and demanding loyalty or expecting loyalty. I think that great leaders, just because of what they do, how they do it, leading with their why, leading with their beliefs, and always aligning themselves to their mission, people want to be loyal to them, whereas bosses demand people be loyal to them, and that's not real loyalty.
Thank you, Suzanne. Lavette, I think you were chiming in.
Yes, I was looking at actually the first and the second bullets, just thinking about the need to belong. But going kind of on the flip side, sometimes you hear and experience how being in leadership is a lonely, you're in that by yourself a lot of times, and people don't understand, and you just really have to have that connection, because it's just a lonely place at times, because you have to make those decisions that are not always going to be the ones that everybody feels connected to, and you have to have that command to be able to pull people in. But that need to connect is really, really strong. But then you also have to know your why very well and feel very confident in your why, so that when you may not have someone that is going along with you, or at the beginning, you still have the inspiration and the motivation to keep at it. So that's really tough. And I have fought with that too, trying to make everybody happy and making everybody feel like they're on my side, but just knowing that sometimes in leadership, it doesn't happen that way. And so we have to find ways to be able to bring people along and inspire them, but also have the courage to step out.
And Lavette, I will tell you this is a truth of leadership. The further up you go up that ladder, the lonelier it gets. Have you found that to be true, Melody? Because I think you probably have gotten up pretty high on that ladder.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The ability to have that support structure. I know principals should have a network of working with each other, but when you become the assistant superintendent or the associate superintendent or the superintendent, that pool of people in which you can depend on not to be lonely, it really does substantially shrink. That's why you should make sure that when you go home, you develop your relationship with your family, your husband, your wife, or whatever. That whole stuff of school and work needs to stop, so your personal relationships then become your balance, because it will be lonely at the top, and you're just beginning to touch lonely. An assistant principal begins to feel the loneliness because you can't be that teacher anymore.
Yeah, I was going to speak to that. Like, even the transition from teacher to assistant principal, that's an extreme period where you just like almost feel like you abandoned. Like, everybody abandons you. You lose all your friends. Like, it's not the same understanding. It gets really lonely.
Yeah.
You all are so awesome. Thank you so much for your feedback. And I do agree. I'm not an assistant principal, but I am an instructional coach, and that's a lonely job as well. I feel alone sometimes. That's why I worry Lakeisha so much. Okay, moving on.
You're considered an administrator. I mean, honestly and truly, you crossed over to that administrator zone.
Absolutely. My former principal told me I was going to the dark side.
Yeah, that's what they say.
The next part is about gut decisions, and the author says that gut decisions don't happen in your stomach. It's a biology thing. So looking at one of the quotes that he said was, the power of why is not an opinion, it's biology. When you develop your why, it's not so much about a gut decision. It's really something that's going on within your brain. And that brings us to the golden circle, as he compared it to the human brain. The limbic part of the brain and the neocortex part of the brain is just as related to the why, the how, and the what. And so I'm just going to elaborate on that a little bit. Let me move my video. Hold on, I'm trying to get the camera. Okay, here we go. So the first part of the brain that he talks about is the neocortex. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Sounds right to me.
Okay, sounds good. It corresponds to the what in the golden circle, and it's responsible for the rational and the analytical thought and language. And he says on page 58, understand people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So, you know, you got to go beyond that neocortex part of your brain and dip into the limbic part of the brain, and that's the why, that's the how, that's the compelling why. And as Dr. Stone was asking tonight, why is it that you will follow that leader? What is it about that leader? It's not the what he's doing, it's why he's doing what he's doing. And he really stressed that on tonight. And that's that limbic part of the brain. And that part of the brain is responsible for our feelings, that trust and the loyalty that you were talking about, Sabrina. That's that part of the brain that you're feeling. It's responsible for human behavior. It's responsible for all of our decision making, and it has no capacity for language. So I was chuckling as Dr. Stone was asking, why would you follow him? And you could not quite put it in words, because your limbic part, your expressions, what you're feeling, sometimes you just can't verbalize it. And so I was over here like, you know, he's stepping into, you know, my presentation. We cannot always explain that why, because that's a different layer of our brain, and sometimes they're not connected.
Well,
What's that?
You're right. They're not connected, and sometimes we have difficulty trying to explain the why. I mean, it really is hard to conceptualize.
Absolutely. Let me go back here. Oops, I just hit something I wasn't supposed to hit. I'm sorry. I'm trying to find you all again, so I like talking to you. Anyways, I don't know where you went.
Go back up here to the top. There's probably a...
Oh, I see it. Yep, you're right. I found you again. Okay. I just like to look at you when I'm talking to you. I apologize about that. So the limbic brain controls your feelings and not the language. So oftentimes you can't verbalize the way you're feeling. For an example, you know, he used this example in his text. Can you truly explain this? Why did you marry your spouse? And, you know, we know why we married it. You know, we know why we married our spouse. We just can't verbalize it. And we may make a statement such as, well, he completes me, or she completes me, or he or she is funny. You know, we have some kind of, I hate to say it, generic response, because we really can't put our feelings into words and express that. And that's that limbic part of the brain. And we know that falling in love is more about a feeling than it is about an explanation. So that's why it's hard. Sabrina, I saw you struggling. You were just trying to express your why. You know, why would you follow him? You know, you were like, he's loyal. You know, you were trying to put it into words, but it was hard. And that's because that was the feeling. And it was hard. You were thinking with that limbic part of the brain versus the neocortex. Anybody want to chime in on this slide before I move on? All righty then. And I use a meme. It's not that you don't know, you just have a hard time explaining why you do what you do. So I use one of those memes from that you shared with us, that site. All right, so the next slide said, trust your gut. Have you ever heard a teacher say, go with your first instinct? Decisions that are made with the limbic brain tend to be faster and high quality. And the more time you spend thinking about it, like using that neocortex part of the brain, the what, the more time you spend in the what realm, the more likely you are to overthink about a situation versus the how and the why realm of the golden circle. So he also uses this example about going inside of a store and you looking at TVs and you wanted to buy LCD TV or a plasma TV. You wanted some sort of flat screen TV. So imagine that you were inside of Walmart, or you were inside of Best Buy, you were in some type of electronics store. And have you ever experienced yourself standing in that store trying to make a decision for over an hour? Women, you know we are guilty of this. It could be a dress, it could be shoes, it could be something, and we're standing in that store trying to debate, do I really want this? Is this the one I really want? And we spent countless amount of time debating. And then after you decide, sometimes you're still not 100% confident that you went with the right decision. And then here you go to your friend's house and they have that other TV that you did not buy, or they have the dress that you thought you wanted and you put it back on the shelf, and now you're jealous because you're like, oh man, maybe I should have gotten that one. You know, you were overthinking it.
Angela, if it takes more than 5 minutes, you're wasting your time.
So what's that?
If you're wasting on a decision about buying something over 5 minutes, you really are wasting your time.
Well, I can truly say, Dr. Stone, I have wasted a lot of time buying jewelry and dresses and shoes.
Shoes.
Okay. So the question that I wanted to pose to you is, when you did waste that time, did you waste that time because you were purchasing what you wanted or why you wanted it? Think about this. If I was car shopping, and he uses this example as well, will I go for a Lamborghini or would I go for a Honda? I think he used a Ferrari or something like that in the text. Well, I have a family of 4. I have a family of 5. A two-seater would not fit my lifestyle right now or what I'm trying to do. So I would probably buy a Honda van or, my Dodge Durango, which could seat 5 people versus a 2-seater. So when you're making decisions, are you basing on what you need or why you truly need it?
Point.
Okay. I got a head nod so I can move on. Okay. And this is just how I wanted to end this, because I thought it was, and I hope I have time. It's just 5 minutes. I thought this really summed up this last section. It's what you can't see that matters. And this was really inspirational to me. I don't know if you can hear it. Can you hear it?
Don't hear anything yet. Yeah, got it.
The why was born out of pain. It was never an academic or commercial exercise. It was born out of a time in my life many years ago, 10 years ago, where I had lost my passion for what I was doing. I owned my own small business. I was living the American dream. Superficially, my life was fantastic. And yet I didn't want to wake up and do it again. And I was embarrassed by that. Who am I to complain about my life? My life seemed perfect, and yet I hated it. And so I kept it to myself. Every ounce of my being, all the energy that I had was invested in pretending that I was happier, more successful, and more in control than I felt. And it was debilitating, quite frankly. Strange things start to happen when you put yourself in that cycle and the stress starts to build. You start to become paranoid. So, for example, I was convinced that my employees hated me. I didn't go out much, and it was really a bad time. And it wasn't until a friend of mine came to me concerned that I wasn't acting myself and basically offered me nothing more than moral support. Whatever you need, I got your back. I'm worried about you. And it was that simple act that gave me the courage to face my own problem. And it was that simple act that gave me the courage to seek out a solution, to go back to the way I used to feel, to be passionate about something again. There was a confluence of events. And I made this discovery that every single organization on the planet, even our own careers, always function on the same 3 levels: what we do, how we do it, and why we do it. And it was based on the biology of human decision making. It wasn't some highfalutin management theory. It was based on brain stuff. And I realized I knew what I did. I was good at it. And I knew how I did it. I could tell you what was different or special about the way I did things. But I couldn't tell you why I was doing it. That was the missing piece. You have to have all 3. I became obsessed with this thing called the why. I figured out how to find my why, and it restored my passion to levels I had never experienced before. More importantly, I figured out how to help others find theirs. And I did what anyone would do. When you discover something beautiful, you share it with your friends. And my friends started making crazy life changes themselves. And they started finding happiness and passion that they'd never experienced before. It was me solving my own problem that happened to help others solve it for them too. And people just kept inviting me, and I just kept saying yes. I was making huge decisions that were really easy to make. Like, I shut down my office and started over again because I realized the business I had built was so inconsistent with my why. All my friends thought I went out of business and they worried about me. It was the easiest decision I ever made. In other words, when you know your why, the filter is clear. It's not like there are options. The option is obvious. There's only one option: share, give, inspire. And everything that I've achieved, any success that I've enjoyed, has all been 100% because of the gracious, just amazing generosity of people around me. my friends, my colleagues, people who just believe what I believe, they're the ones who either introduced me to others or took a risk or said, let me try that, or bought a book or watched a TED Talk, or more importantly, sent it to somebody else because they thought they would be inspired by it. For all of the things that I've done over the past decade, I still feel like I'm at the beginning. I've been saying it for 10 years, and everybody says to me, congratulations on X, Y, or Z. My answer is always the same, tip of the iceberg. And I think that's what keeps me inspired, which is, for me, it's a journey. I'm on the right path. I'm walking past the right mile markers. In other words, I know I'm making progress to the vision that I have to build this world in which the vast majority of people wake up every single morning, inspired to go to work, feel safe when they're there, returning home at the end of the day, fulfilled by the work that they do. When I started the race, I ran by myself, and it's lonely. And now I got like 1,000 people to the left and 1,000 people to the right, and 1,000 people behind me. And I look around, I'm like, yep, we're going to change the world. We're going to change the world. There you go.
I love you.
That ending was definitely a tearjerker to me, because if you've seen his expression after his wife ran to him, he kind of teared up a little bit. But nevertheless, in conclusion, the limbic brain not only controls our gut decision, it influences us. It influences us to do things that we think are illogical or irrational. And if we were all doing things that were rational, think about this: there would be no small businesses, there would be no exploration, there would be very little innovation, and there would be no great leaders to inspire us, and there will be no start with why. So products with a clear sense of why give people a way to tell the outside world who they are and what they believe in. And remember, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it.
Very good, Angela. So before I forget it, we're going to move to you next, Melody. So Angela, you want to go ahead and stop sharing your screen.
Okay.
It's down here at the bottom. Yep,
Got
there
it.
you go. And so Melody, you're going to be coming up. So you want to go ahead and bring yours up, Melody? Go ahead and hit the share screen down here at the bottom. It's a little green. Mine's a green. I don't know if yours is green. Yep, you got it. So while Melody's doing this, let me just tell you your assignment for our next class, which will be next week. I want you, in 3 to 5 words, be able to tell me what your why is. Your personal why. Now, it's your personal why. It's not your professional. Your personal why. 3 to 5 words. You can't go over 5. Can't go less than 3. Can you hear me? You don't need to say, this is my why. Just go ahead. 3 to 5 words. All right. Melody, you're up.
Okay. All right. So what I'm going to share, it may be a bit redundant on some parts. So
we know yours is going to be smaller, so you just breeze on through those parts.
All right, there you go. So I wanted to start with a recap of part 1 since I was going into part 2. So in part 1, there was a conversation. We had information shared by Dr. Stone about manipulation versus inspiration. And if you go think back to that conversation, we talked about how companies use price, quality, feature, service, promotions, and fear to manipulate people into purchasing products or availing themselves to those services. And so what we want to talk about is inspirations. How do we gain loyalty, make an emotional connection, share our purpose, our beliefs, be authentic, and aim for higher causes. So that is the focus of part 2, an alternative perspective. And the Golden Circle is introduced in part 2, which has already been shared. And the purpose of the Golden Circle is a theory to help us to inspire rather than to manipulate people. So the author gives the examples of Apple, Harley-Davidson, John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, and I even reflected on the strategic leaders that we shared in our last face-to-face session in class as examples of persons who follow this concept of the Golden Circle, knowing what you do, how you do it, and why you do it, but looking at that from the inside out, starting with the why. So I have a video which illustrates why knowing your why gives what you do more impact. So hopefully this will come up. Okay, gotta skip the ad. There we go.
You probably need to turn up the volume.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
The volume, we can't hear it.
Oh, you can't hear it. Okay.
Look there at that volume.
Let's see. So that's up.
Maybe your
Hold on.
laptop or your computer.
Okay. Okay.
Can you hear it?
I hear it. So you all don't hear it at all?
No.
Okay. Well, we will cancel that and move on. Yeah, because I can hear it on this end. Okay. Let's go back. Well, anyway, in the video, if you've not seen it, there is a young man that sings Amazing Grace, sings it beautifully. But then he's given a context of why he's singing Amazing Grace. His father just died. He's been through a lot in his life. He's given more of a context and a purpose behind singing, and he sings it even more beautifully than before. So that is what the whole concept of that particular video was about. So I hate that, but we'll keep it moving. So it just is another way to exemplify the importance of knowing your why. And I think someone already shared the example of Apple. They start with everything we do, we believe is challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently, knowing your why. How do they do it? They make products beautifully designed, simple and user-friendly. And then what do? They make great computers. So starting with the why is our focus to inspire. This is another.
Now, who is the author of that Amazing Grace? And I'll see if I can pull it up.
Let me see. It is, I can try to email you the link. It's called.
That's all right. I'll look up Michael Jr. You go ahead.
It's called Know Your Why, Michael Jr. It's a great video. I love hopefully you can see it. So if you could get that up, that would be great. And then there's another, actually, I was gonna give another example here. If you've not seen, everybody has been to Blockbuster. Well, I don't know, maybe everybody hasn't been to Blockbuster, but knowing your why is not the only way, it's just one way, but the importance of knowing your why will help you to evolve in the face of changing times. So the Simon Sinek gives the example of the railroad industry back in the 1800s. They were focused on building railroads. That was their what. And they never ever got out of that what. They didn't focus on their why. So by the time the 1900s came, those major railroad companies were out of business because the new mode of transportation was now air travel. And so had they been focused on their why, which is public transportation, getting people across the country from place to place, they could have evolved. Same example, and this is a video as well, that Blockbuster, it's really funny, gives an example how, back in the day, we would go into the store to rent a video. Now that is a crazy concept to sit and think about. How Blockbuster did not evolve over time. It ended up going out of business. So having a greater purpose, knowing your why, not just your what, not just selling videos, but are you in the business to entertain families? So knowing your why. The next section was about how all of this is not about an opinion. So Simon Sinek is not just making this up, but it is about biology. And Angela already shared the concept of those niches and the importance of belonging. So I'm gonna ask my classmates, so where do you belong? How many of you, and I guess I can't see everybody at the same time, how many, but maybe just chime in, how many of you are Mac users? Yes, I see Matt, just Matt. Anybody else a Mac user? So just Matt, so everybody else are PCs. So, but the whole concept in Start With Why is that the Mac users, that's a certain type of person. PCs are a certain type of person. Those companies have tapped into brand loyalty. All right, and this might be in the same line. How many of you all have Android phones? Hands up, most hands up. Matt, you got an iPhone? Yes. Anybody else have an iPhone? Okay, Dr. Stone, Angela. So a little bit of difference there with the iPhone. And then finally, we talked earlier about cars. I can't remember, but in this example, how many of you, your dream car is a Mercedes or something like it? Okay, and then what about Subaru? How about the Subaru? And that's fine, Suzanne, because the interesting part with the Subaru is that Subaru is all about safety. Like, that's the one thing I know about Subarus. And when I think of Mercedes, I think about high, luxury. So it's really about knowing who you are and where you belong. And those companies have tapped into that particular niche area. They know exactly who they are and what they represent, and they clearly communicate that. And so I believe Angela did a great job of explaining how those decisions that we make about who we're going to follow, what we're going to purchase are made in the limbic brain. When we make those gut feelings, we can't communicate that because there is no capacity for language in the limbic part of the brain. So that's another visual of what Angela shared. And I thought it was really interesting. I had to do a presentation recently to a group of principals about branding and marketing their school. So, and when I was preparing for that presentation, I found this quote. So I actually opened with this quote: creating an emotional connection to your brand is not about statistics, it's not about customer demographics or population trends, but it is about making people feel something so strongly that they have no choice but to buy into your company and what it does. So I thought this was an interesting quote that I had already been sharing before I started reading the book, and I thought it was a great tie-in with the authors stressing the importance of making an emotional connection. Another great leader and another great company that were excellent examples of how you have to see what others can't see. Tap into that which is not visible was Southwest. Southwest was focused on getting at the time that Southwest started, only 15% of Americans were traveling by air. So Southwest decided to tap into the other 85%, the group that wasn't traveling by air, the common man. And they said that they were going to make air travel simple and easy to use and cost efficient for the common man to fly. Same thing with John F. Kennedy. Most time we think of politicians, they're going to tell you what they're going to do for you. But one of his great quotes was not ask not what you can do for what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. So tapping into that which others can't see. Finally, it's what you can't see that matters. And so new behavior is driven by heart, hopes, and dreams. And so I think Sabrina did an excellent job when she was talking about how we ask teachers to do morning duty. And I think Livette talked about how we ask teachers to do the new testing plan. That's the what we do every day. But why are we there? And like I said, Matt talked about students. Craig talked about relationships. How do we tap into people's hearts, hopes, and dreams? Because that's truly what drives new behavior. And finally, there was a section called the clarity of why. So being clear about who you are and what your purpose is, having the discipline of how you're going to do your work. Are you going to remain true to your values, have integrity, and being consistent. Be who you say you are, do what you say you're going to do every day. So clarity of why, discipline of how, consistency of what. And so at this time, we were going to do, I think this is now the assignment that Dr. Stone has asked us to do, but I was going to have us take a minute just to reflect on what is our personal why. Just make sure that we do give that to Dr. Stone. That was going to be the activity there. And to sum the whole section off, I looked at it as a cycle with beliefs being at the top of the cycle. So you have to know what you believe. What do you believe? And if you are truly passionate about what you believe, you'll form relationships and people will follow you, and you'll form relationships with others that are passionate as well, and that will foster loyalty and trust, and then continue to remain true to your beliefs. So that was the focus of kind of a summary of part 2 of the book, Start With Why. And I apologize, a lot of it were the videos, which we were unable to see, but maybe we can see them another time. Any questions?
All right, if you will stop sharing, Melody, I think I may have that video of, let me see.
Michael Jr.?
Yeah, I think I had that. So is this it?
Yes, it looks like it.
All right, let me know if you can hear it.
Can you turn up a little bit?
That's the best I can do. All right. Okay. Any questions for Melody before we move on to Lavette. All right, Lavette, I'm going to stop sharing. That means that you now can share. It's going to be the green button down here. Do you see the green button down at the bottom, Lavette? There you go.
Okay.
All yours.
I'm hoping that y'all can hear the sound. If not, I'll re-improvise.
You know, you're well. You're doing well.
Chapter 6, the emergence of trust. Okay, so this is the point for discussion. Thinking about he started off this chapter about really having a reason why you go to work and enjoying what you do there. But have you ever felt that you did not like a job that you were in? And why did you feel that way? What types of things happened in that job that made you feel that it wasn't, you know, your dream job or something that you liked? And then from there, this quote just says, you can't have a good product without people who like coming to work. Do you agree with this or do you not? This is discussion time.
Lavette, I'm going to start out by just kind of going off of what I was talking about earlier. That time my principal made me become the Common Core director for the position for the district for high school math. That was my last year at high school because he made me do something that I didn't desire. Like, it wasn't something I wanted to do. And I like the video I share with you all, I just found I didn't know my why. I kind of lost my love for teaching. So I reached out to another principal and like, listen, if I don't get out of this school, I'm going to quit teaching and I'm going into nursing. And this was after like my 4th year of teaching. So she invited me to come to the middle school, and that's where I kind of been for the past 7 or so years. But yes, I had felt that way, and I stopped liking teaching to a point because I didn't know why I was there. I lost my why, I lost my meaning, I lost my purpose. But then I kind of found myself again. So I enjoy what I do now. I love coming to work. I love inspiring teachers. I love building those relationships. I love coaching. I'm kind of ready for something different now, but it's not that I don't love it. It's just I want to grow more.
Right. Awesome. Anybody else that just any specific characteristics or things that you might associate with not making a workplace enjoyable, or why you don't enjoy work? And if not, do you agree or disagree with the statement about having a good product? Can you really have something worthwhile and good if people don't like doing what they do?
Do any of you serve in schools where you have teachers, colleagues who don't really like what they're doing?
If I can make a statement, you can't have the best student possible if you don't have the best teachers coming in every day. And you can have a bad day, but you can't have a bad semester. So you want to make sure you're doing your best and checking in on your staff so that you can have good college and career ready students.
Have you ever had a teacher that's having a bad semester or a bad year?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's where your mentorship comes in. That's where you check in. That's where you make sure you have all your processes in place. You make sure you use your evaluations carefully. They're not just simple checkoffs for administration. They're sincere, monitored feedback.
Okay.
Good question.
And those are really great thoughts because, like Sabrina said, the product will be a student or a child's success or a child's proficiency on those types of things. And so I know I've had conversations with my teachers. If you're not 100% or your best, you're not giving your best to the kids. And so sometimes it's better to stay home and get better or feel your best instead of coming in halfway, especially if it's for an extended amount of time, because the kids are not getting the best, which means we're not going to get the best product out of what we're trying to do. On pages 84 and 85 are driven by things other than themselves, and trust is earned by demonstrating and communicating why, what, and how. That companies are cultures. Take a moment and discuss what are some things you look for when you hire people into your organization. So
this is a great question.
In this chapter, the understanding is that companies are like cultures. And in order to have an effective working culture, you have to have people who have the same values and beliefs. So this is just another discussion point for us. What are some things that we are important or that you look for when you're hiring people into your school, your company, and even personal relationships? What are some of those qualities that you look for?
That one of the things that I learned from a previous principal of mine, and I learned it actually when he was interviewing me for my job, is we always ask the people that we're interviewing for positions, do you think it's important for your students to like you?
I asked that question too.
It's interesting because, you'll get the people who say, no, I don't want them to like me. I want them to respect me. And then you get the people who say, oh, I want them to love me. But it's the people who dig down and say, it really kind of depends on what you mean by like. I want to have relationships. I want there to be mutual respect, that sort of thing. That's what we're looking for. And when we find those people, almost always those people are a good fit for our culture.
That's an excellent question. And I use that question, and my staff, they know that that's my question that I ask, because there's certain things that you can teach and other things that you can't. And I think it's very, very crucial that people like children and that they feel that relationships are important. So that's an awesome question. Any other things that you look for when you hire?
Flexibility.
Lavette, one thing that comes to my mind, I know whenever you interview people, you normally have your script that you read and you answer questions for them. You write down. I normally don't write anything down in an interview. I look for that human element. I like to look at body language, voice intonation, all those things that your students will see on a day-to-day basis. It helps them to see that you're a real human, and that a lot of times we know in interviews you have done your research to try to know how to answer questions, but I kind of want to see what you speak from the heart, because this is what we're in front of our students, and this is what they see. I think thinking quick on your feet and having that human element of communication, looking people in the eyes, those kinds of things help build your genuineness that our students can see. And so I think that's important to really pay attention to their body language and what they say, how they hold their hands, all those kinds of things that let you know they're human when they're interviewing, and it's important.
That's a really good point. Craig, you mentioned flexibility.
Yeah, I say it's important to be flexible because in middle school, I've got 7th and 8th grade, and I think you've got to be flexible. Definitely individual who from day to day, you don't hold a grudge. Middle school students, they come in, they, because of hormones, level of immaturity, that frontal lobe is not quite developed yet. There's a lot of things that take place and happen. So you got to be flexible. You got to be willing to work with them, and just try to make things happen for them day to day.
Awesome. Thank you. Anybody else? Any other thoughts about things that you look for specifically? I think a lot of it just goes into that piece about our values and beliefs. And you know that people's beliefs sometimes are different from ours. So some of those things that we look for in people that work in our cultures or in those cultures or companies may look different from school to school or from place to place. depending on what the values are of the person who is in leadership.
Can I add something a little bit?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so something to piggyback on what Lakeisha said, that I agree 100%. And anytime when I was hiring principals, and I'll tell you as a superintendent, usually when they're hiring principals, I usually had at least 3 other people in the room with me, associate superintendents or others, and we each had a role to play. And one of us was the body language person. And so our goal in that interview was to come away saying, we each had to report back on something, and I usually had the body language. I usually had the part about the nonverbal skills, or how they reacted, or how comfortable they looked, because someone else is going to be concentrating on how they answer the questions. And I can almost guarantee you that if you are going to apply for a principalship, or anyone does, they pretty much have the standard answers that you're kind of looking for. If you don't mention children in every one of your answers, you know, that's a problem point for many of us who evaluate or who interview.
Please forgive me. My daughter is at the door. I'm going to open my door. I'll be right
back. Go right ahead. I'll keep talking.
Okay.
Also, a part of that too is someone else will be looking at their resume. So we try to divide up the duties, but at the end of the conference, when that person has left the room, we each go around and we talk about how we felt about that person. And I'm really looking at their personal skills, their people skills. Like Lakeisha said, I'm looking at whether or not they sweat when I ask them a question. Because my question, I'm not listening to the answer. I'm listening to how they're reacting to my question. And I always, whether I agree that they've got the right answer or not, I always ask a follow-up question. And the purpose of that is, how do they handle it? And so it's great when you start doing your interviews to do, as Lakeisha says, to build in that component, because I can almost guarantee you, unless the person is really bad, they're all going to have very similar questions. And your interviews are going to be trying to determine, in your interview, when you make that final decision of one or the other, or when someone makes that decision about you being one or the other person, they're going to be looking for a whole lot more than how you answer those questions. They're going to be looking for how you, under pressure, they're going to look for that body language. They're going to be looking for how you interact with the superintendent, how you interact with people who may or may not be your evaluators down the road. That's an excellent point. Don't just go in asking questions. Go in with an approach to get a real feel for that person, how they handle under pressure. And I can tell you, when I was interviewing principals, they hated it when I came back with another question, because that made them, sometimes it was a little pressure for the superintendent to have a follow-up question or to kind of challenge you on your answer. And I always did, and I know they hated it. But it tells you a lot about somebody when you challenge their answer, how they respond. Because some people will just correct it. They agree with you. And that's not what you really want. You want to see how they work with that. Good point. All right, sorry.
Nope, thank you.
Did she get in?
She got in.
All right.
She got in, so she's watching TV. Thank you.
If there is sound, we're not hearing it.
Not hearing it. Hold on. Can you hear?
Not very well.
No. No hearing?
Not very well. No, not, you can't make it out.
Hold on. I'm going to try one more time.
Go to your video settings at the bottom of the page, and that might help.
Let me see. I plugged in headphones, and I think that messed me up. Let me see. Any difference? No.
It's kind of like it's way back, and we're hearing the echo of it. So go ahead, just talk through it.
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know what just happened. But no, this slide was just talking about how there's a difference, and an actual difference in between leading and being a leader, where leading involves a commitment, or involves the to get buy-in, to get willingness from others. And being a leader is kind of, this is the position, it's a force thing that because I'm the leader, you have to do what I ask you to do. So Sinek went into how we need to have that act of leading so that people buy into what we do and are willing to follow along with what we have.
Okay.
Can you hear any of this? Can you hear?
It's very muffled.
Could you admit when you initially did you hear it at the beginning better, or it was always muffled? Okay, I'm just gonna read what I wrote with the slide. So here it goes. What this just said was that when we're hiring, there's certain things that we need to look for. One of them is the attitude, not the skill. Like we were asking, we talked about that question, do you like children? But that's the types of things where that you cannot, you can't teach certain things. And so skills we can teach of people, but you have to have the attitude to be willing to learn and those types of things. People have to be passionate about our why, and they also have to be motivated, and they also have to believe in something greater. So we have to be able to communicate our why to others so that they are able to buy into it and believe it. And because somebody does not believe what we believe does not make them good or bad. It just may not make them a good fit for our company or where we are. But in order for that success and that growth to occur, you have to have someone who believes what you believe, or you have to be able to empower them to come into what it is that you want to do so that you can get the outcome that you're looking for. This was just saying that these are 5 tips that we are looking for when we need to create an environment that great ideas can happen. And so by giving people a cause, making sure that we bring the right people in, people who are not worried about self, because they are high risk, which means they will leave you at any point if they see that something else is more lucrative. So you have to be very careful about self-gainers. You have to protect your people and make them feel safe and make them feel like they belong. And we've heard it throughout the other presentations. You have to make people feel appreciated. And sometimes that means serving, and we have to be able to serve others. Leading with why. We have to know why we are doing what we're doing if we expect anybody to come along with us. So we have to be able to communicate that and make sure that people understand that clearly so that, again, we're all going in the same direction. And then finally, we have to have clarity and discipline, because if we do not have those things, we break down trust. And so we have to just be sure that all of these pieces are there so that people are getting what they need from us and then are able to create those innovative ideas to continue to build us to where we want to go. So just look at this, take a second to read this thought. And why, let's discuss why we feel that someone who is self-motivated or has self-interest can break down a company. I'll give you a few minutes to read and then just to make comments on why we think that people who are motivated about themselves could hurt our cause and our company. Any thoughts? Do you think it's true that people who are kind of are, I don't want to say selfish, but who are thinking about what they can get out of it, or how I'm going to succeed, or I'm going to get to the next step, do you think that that can hurt a company, or do you think that's a good thing?
Absolutely. You think about Enron, and I guess MCI was another company. When you talk about individuals being selfish and only focus on their own selfish gains, their own selfish motivation, own self-interest, that is the reason why those companies failed and broke down.
Absolutely.
And Lavette, I think if you look at it from an educational standpoint, when you have people whose mission is not aligned with the mission of the school, they will do things sometimes to sabotage the actual mission of the school. And that'll certainly break down any type of desire for improvement or growth.
Right. We did a PD in Cumberland County, and it was about the different types of people in an organization. And there was one group called the snipers, those who are kind of looking out to make you fail. They can be silent or they can be out there, but they're going to shoot everything that you do because that's what their role is. And they, want to be that negative force and bring that in. So these sometimes are these types of people who are just trying to see how I'm going to get something out of this, and it can truly and actually hurt the goals of the company. Any other thoughts? Okay. And so this is a quote that was on page 109. It says that great leaders embody a sense of purpose that inspires those around them. And this was coming from one of the successful commanders in the Army, and she ended her career very well, but it was really about having that purpose and being able to inspire others, and people were able to put their trust in her, and they said that they really wanted her to lead them through war as they were doing their flights and all of that good stuff. So this is just a moment for us to think about, should people trust us? Are the qualities and the beliefs that we have those that will encourage people to follow us, to be inspired by us? And so it's really just a reflective time. Why should people trust us? What is it that we're doing? What traits do we have that are giving people the courage and making them feel protected and safe and inspired around us? And these were just my reflections. A lot of it is in the Bible, it says, don't be unequally yoked. But you got to think about, again, having the right people around you. In leadership, you cannot succeed by yourself. And so the relationships are what will make or break you. So again, having the people that believe in me, that follow, that, get around my why and are able to push us to where we need to go are just very, very important. And in order to have those people, we have to create the appropriate environment for that to happen, which means giving incentives, making people feel safe, encouraging and giving compliments and those types of things, and thanking others and showing that appreciation, because trust is that foundation, but we have to work to build that as leaders. And the last page is just the references. Are there any questions that you may have about chapter 6? I'm sorry about the sound, y'all.
I like this. I'm gonna have to try it myself. This is Powtoon. I'm gonna have to try it out and see how it works.
This was my first try at it in a whole presentation, and it worked a whole lot better when the sound worked. But yeah, I do like it. So I said I was going to try something new this time.
All right, I'm gonna play with it next week.
Thank you.
All right, why don't we take a 3-minute little quick breather stretcher, and we'll come back with Crystal. And Crystal, you'll talk about chapter or part 5, and then Lakeisha will finish us up with her presentation. So let's take like a quick little 3, get up, stretch, get a drink or something. Coca-Cola, Diet Coke maybe. Oh, and you'll need to stop share. Oh, there you go. Crystal, why don't you go ahead and share and take over the screen so when folks get back, we can start.
Okay.
You're doing your hair different. That's not the way you had it on the weekend, was it?
It was just in a ponytail and on the weekend. Yeah.
All right. Didn't even recognize you almost. You got it. It's yours.
Okay.
We'll start. Hang on, though. We'll start in about a minute.
Okay.
And Crystal, how about? And I'm gonna try to pace you to about 15 minutes so we can try to be done by 8:30. I've got one more after this.
I can be done in less than 15 minutes.
You got 15 though. You got to engage them. You got to get them to answer questions and all those kinds of things. They're very good at it.
Okay.
Let me see. I'm looks like this thing 1, 2, 3, 4 maybe. All right. I know it's probably only 2 minutes, but we will definitely be finished by 8:30. So, because you all have had a long day, and I know you're tired. So, we're going to go ahead and start with Crystal. It is all yours.
Okay. I did part 5. The biggest challenge is success. And so, in chapter 11, he starts off the chapter with the story of Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart. He talks about how Walton understood that his why was to serve people, and that if he treated people right, people would be loyal to them. But when Walton passed, Walmart lost its why. And so now that's why you find city councils are fighting to keep Walmart out of their areas, and even employees are filing like civil suits because they feel like Walmart's not treating them right. Walmart's become more concerned with their what instead of their why.
That's a perfect example.
So the author gives an account of how he went to visit this Gathering of Titans, which is one of where like some of the most brightest and most successful entrepreneurs in the country meet. And so they were asked, had they reached their financial goals? 80% raised their hands. But when asked, did they feel successful? 80% put their hands down. And so they understood their what and their how. But one thing a lot of them commented on was that they lost sight of their why the more successful they got. So the author says that there is a clear difference between achievement and success, but that many people confuse it. And so like this accounts to people who are like famous. They all often comment, the more famous they got, the more lonely they became. And so success and achievement are not the same thing. Achievement is a goal that one reaches, it's tangible, it's measurable, and achievements are good, they help to serve as a milestone. But success is a feeling or a state of being. And so typically your success occurs when you are attaining your why. So businesses and people, while trying to build a brand or a following, often become confident in what they do and how they do it. However, they lose sight of the why. Those who do not lose sight of the why reach goals and have the ability to aspire. So this is like what everyone's been saying about Apple, how no matter what, if you're like an Apple believer from the beginning, you've probably had every single product. Whereas some people, some companies, they don't. So that's why maybe like Microsoft or Dell, you see they were like flashes in a pan almost. They had a whole lot of success, but now maybe not as much. So questions for y'all. Has your why ever gone fuzzy?
I think you can get caught up in the day-to-day, especially in a school, of being busy and completing tasks and checking off boxes. And I think you can get caught up and not take the time to reflect on the why you're doing it.
And how do you define achievement and success? Anyone?
This is getting to the heart of your why. Come on, one of you. How do you define success?
I think it's based on student success or student growth. And I think about student growth more so as a set number. If students are growing, then you can say that you're successfully moving forward.
Okay. Craig, how would you personally define that as success?
Personally, I look at it, I know a lot of times from the perspective of your boss or from the perspective of community and the state, they're looking at that bottom line. If you don't meet a certain criteria, you're not successful. But I try to break it down per student. And so I look at students individually and I look at students as groups, and I take advantage of those steps of making success. So let's say with our Read 180 program, I saw where some students went up 3 grade levels. That's success to me. It may mean that overall we might not see a big jump in our test scores, but for those students, those 20 or 30 students that have leaped, for me, that's showing success. I'm seeing individuals who might not be on a diploma track get on a diploma track, and I'm seeing their dreams come come true, or perhaps that dreams possibly come true because of something we put in place. So for me, that's success.
And I think you internalizing it and personalize it, because I think what you're saying, it is success for the school, success for those kids. But I think, Craig, you're also saying that you personally take it as a success for your leadership when they are successful or they perform. Absolutely.
I think for the most
That's
part.
your why. That's your why then. That's a part of your why, is that child who will never be on grade level, who is already 4 or 5 years behind or 4 or 5 levels behind, but they make over 1.5 years growth. Wow, that's huge success, and that's success that you celebrate with them.
Absolutely.
Right. Success looks like, it's not what people think success looks like. People judge school districts on achievement, not success. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
All right.
Crystal.
In chapter 12, he talks about when split happens, okay? So this is what happens when your why leaves. So what happened to Walmart when their founder died? And so the question is, can your organization pass the school bus test? So today, if your founder were to get hit by a school bus and die, would the business or the organization be able to continue? Okay. Would it be able to continue to keep a clear vision of the why, or would it lose its way?
Okay, I'm going to throw this at you, so you answer this. You can think to yourself. You don't have to answer it. But if you weren't in your job tomorrow, if you were not hit by a bus, none of you hit by a bus, but if you were not in your job tomorrow, would your school or your district, would they pass? I mean, would they be able to continue on?
Well, I'm a teacher, so yes. they put a substitute or something in there. Somebody.
It's a teacher shortage, maybe not.
Well,
and I too, I say that, and I've seen that a lot too. And while you have to have balance, because if I died, they would fill my position rather quickly. I'm sure of it. But that's one thing that I have the conversation with my staff is I'm just one piece of this. If I'm not here, if I'm away at a conference, if I don't work at this school anymore, you are the people that are continuing to carry this vision out, and you are the ones that are doing these to kids. So it has to be beyond me. Every decision can't come from me. I can't do every piece of it. You have to buy into it. You have to sell it. You have to then live it. So I think that's really, really important. Whereas, because like I said, I'm just one person that could not be here very easily, but what are you doing for kids after I leave? And that should be something that they should be able to take and run with. And I hope that that's happening in my building, but I know that was a mindset change in my building when I got there, because everything was done for them. But it's really not me, it's us, because I'm not the person in the classroom. I may not be there, but how are we going to continue to do great things for children?
And great leaders make sure that that is already in place. Great leaders have built organizations that can operate without you.
And for me, I'm an instructional coach, and of course, if I didn't come in, the school system will continue to go on. However, I believe that I have instilled some values in some of the teachers that there's some things that will still carry on. For an example, if I can't make it to a PLC, they're still having their PLC. They're still discussing data. They're still talking about how to move students. So there's some things that I have instilled in some of the teachers there, and some values that I do feel that they will carry on whether I'm there or not, hopefully.
Yes. All right. The third bullet is the one that I want you to pay particular attention to from this chapter. Because as you become the principal or you become the superintendent, whatever your ambition might be, the real challenge is for it not to be you. Your vision is what should be the why. Your vision is what the district or the school should be about. And just as you've mentioned, it really is hard sometimes for principals and for superintendents to make that disconnect. but it really is what will happen when you're gone. What will happen? Because if you don't instill a vision, then the vision is gone when you're gone. All right, go ahead.
So when the physical embodiment of the organization, when it leaves, the only thing that the organization has left oftentimes is the what and the how. And so the goal of the leader is not to implement their own vision, but to lead the organization into the future using the original why. So what companies or organizations have experienced this split? In the book, the author talks about Microsoft, how Bill Gates stepped away, but how when he gave his speech, he didn't say anything about why he founded Microsoft or that he wanted it to carry on. And then for you guys, have you ever experienced a split like this, maybe personally or in your job?
I did. When I was in my previous district at the central office level, we worked really hard with a principal who was in a building who was making a cultural shift in his school, a much needed cultural shift in his school. And he worked hard. He worked really hard. And he had a team of people who were working just as hard as he was at it. But he took a position closer to his ailing parents, his aging parents, took him out of state, and new principal came in, and that school, it was almost like it flipped on a dime, and they went right back to the negative culture that they had prior to that principal being there. When we reflected on it, it was because that principal was the one with the vision. He was the one doing the work. The people who were working beside him were being compliant, didn't buy in. They weren't loyal to him, and they didn't share the same vision.
Good point.
So some personal reflections. For me, it's on your hardest days, it's easy to lose sight of my why. So things like paperwork, testing, data, dealing with administration, or having behavior management issues in the classroom can often cloud, why it is I do what I do. But remembering my why and communicating it clearly and to not only my students, but my colleagues, it inspires them and motivates them. And some leadership takeaways. When the why remains clear, inspiring those you lead and serve is easier. How a leader measures and handles success greatly impacts the future of the organization. And where many leaders fail is that they try to change course instead of continuing and improving on their founding principles.
Crystal, this is a Prezi, right?
Yes, sir. So questions for you all. How have you handled success, and what are ways that you can ensure that you do not lose sight of your why?
Anyone?
Crystal, do you teach biology?
Yes.
Okay, so you know how important biology teachers are.
Mm-hmm.
And having supervised by science for 4 years, success is driven by EOCs. So success can be student performance, teacher performance. I was nominated my second year as assistant principal of the year here. And I took it as, well, is it just my turn? Because there were 5 of us. So sometimes success isn't a big accolade or a trophy or a big poster on the wall. Success can be little achievements. So I think it's important that we celebrate those successes with each other, with your teams, and just take those little moments and not lose sight of our why. and appreciate biology teachers.
Mhm.
All right. All right.
All right.
Go ahead, Crystal, because we're going to wrap up here shortly.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, you're wrapping up now.
Yeah, I'm wrapping
All right.
up.
Well, before Lakeisha, you can go ahead and put up. You can. You need to stop sharing, Crystal. And Lakeisha, if you'll go down and find that green button to share, that'll pull yours up. But while we're doing that, let me talk about. We're not going to go back and do any more chapters in the why because you did what I had instructed you to do. But this book is helpful in that the only thing you should really take away from this book is that you need to know what your why is and how to stay focused on your why. And it's not just important that you know your why, it's important that the people who work with you know your why. That why should become not only your why, because if the great leader leaves, the why is going out the door with you. And that's not really what you should be doing as a great leader. You should understand your why, and you should try to make sure that's the common why and the common why of that culture. So your next week, we're going to talk about in 3 to 5 words what your why is, your personal why. That is what drives you. And that should be also a part of what makes you a successful leader. So that's why this book is important, that you discover your why so that becomes a part of the culture around you and it becomes the why for others in your building or others in your environment or your organization. So start with why. Okay. All right, Lakeisha, did you find the button to share? It's down here at the bottom, this little green button. Lakeisha, are you with us? There you go.
Yes, sir. I am pressing share, but for some reason my PowerPoint is not coming up.
I tell you what.
Is there any way about?
You
I
sent
was
it.
going to ask, is there any way?
Hang on a minute.
Pull up the one that I see.
Yes, you sent it to me, and if you'll give me a moment, I'll pull it up for you. Okay, can't do that.
Thank you.
Okay. Lakeisha, what I'll do then is I'll be the host and you just talk and tell me when to move. All right, hang on a minute. Let me come back. Okay. Can everyone see? Can everyone see the PowerPoint?
I can.
Okay, good. All right, go ahead.
All right. Michelle Obama. I think that this is a good culmination of our night, kind of looking at all the great things that she does as a leader. We've been talking all night about how leaders inspire, and I chose Michelle Obama because she truly inspires me in her very personal way of relating to American citizens and trying to move us all towards greatness. So I hope that I'm not being too book reportish. And I know we all know quite a bit about Michelle Obama, but I think that I need to give you a little background. My first slide talks about, of course, who Michelle Obama is. She was the first African-American First Lady of the United States from the years 2009 to 2017. As First Lady, she focused her attention on social issues such as poverty, healthy living, and education. She graduated from Princeton University and Harvard Law School, and she started her career as an attorney at the Chicago law firm of Sidley and Austin, where she met her future husband, Barack Obama. She continued her career in the Chicago mayor's office, at the University of Chicago, and at the University of Chicago Medical Center. Right now, the Obamas currently live in Washington, D.C. and have 2 daughters, Malia and Sasha. Okay, young Michelle Obama, of course, her name was Michelle LaVaughn Robinson, and she was born January 17th, 1964 in Chicago, Illinois. She was raised on Chicago's South Side. Both of her parents had modest jobs. Her father was a city pump operator and also a Democratic precinct captain. Her mother was a secretary at Spiegel's, and she worked very diligently to raise Michelle and her older brother, Craig. They were often mistaken as twins. As you look at the picture at the bottom right corner, they look alike. They were raised with an emphasis on education, and they both learned to read at home at the age of 4, and they both skipped the 2nd grade. Her education, by the time she was in the 6th grade, she was taking classes in her school's gifted program, where she learned French and accelerated courses in biology. We know that's quite an attainment in 6th grade. She also went on to attend the Whitney M. Young Magnet High School, the city's first magnet high school for gifted children, where she served as student government treasurer, and she graduated later as her school's class salutatorian. Then she, of course, went on to medical school and, law school, and she was one of the first to take part in demonstrations calling for the enrollment and hiring of more minority students and professors. She was awarded her Juris Doctor degree in 1988. Her career, she left corporate law in 1991 to pursue a career in public service. She worked in the mayor's office and became the city's assistant commissioner of planning and development. She moved on to become the executive director for the Chicago branch of public affairs. And she moved on to a host of more activities where she was in a director capacity, where she worked with community relations. And she also served on the board's Chicago Council of Global Affairs and the University of Chicago's laboratory schools. Okay, although we're getting some great biographical information about Michelle Obama, what I would like to really speak to tonight to get everyone to thinking is about the 8 major theories of leadership that we talked about last week in our face-to-face session, where there were theories that make people different types of leaders. The first one, of course, was the great man theory, where you're just naturally born to be a leader. The second one was the trait theory, where you just inherit certain qualities that make you a better person suited to leadership, like having self-confidence and courage. A contingency theory, where you focus on particular variables related to the environment that kind of determine the leadership style that's best suited for a situation. And situational theories, in which leaders choose the best course of action based on situational variables. I would like for you to take a moment and look at the screen and just kind of think about these different theories. And the reason being is, as a leader, we often try to think of ways to inspire our staff and students and the community that we serve. So we have to make sure that we start to find our true leadership style that is going to help us be successful in all types of situations. There are 4 more leadership styles on the next slide. The behavioral theory, that people can learn to become leaders through teaching, observation. Participative theory, which suggests that the ideal leadership style is one that when you take the input of others into account when you're making decisions. The number 7, management theory, focus on the role of supervision, organization, and group performance. These theories are what a lot of our companies today are based on, a system of rewards and punishments. And the final leadership theory is a relationship, where you focus on motivating and inspiring people by helping everyone understand the vision and the importance of the higher good of the task that they're asked to perform.
And you know what, Lakeisha?
Now, as we talk about,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Dr.
You know where I would put Michelle Obama, although I see traits of all 8 of these? You know where her greatest strength, I think, is the last one, relationships. You never I mean, as much abuse as she and Barack took when he was in office and she was the official first lady, I mean, she never stooped low. She never, I mean, it was all about the relationships she built with people. But she's got traits of all of these. I mean, she's got the trait theory, she's got the situational, but probably I think the greatest strength that she brought to the role was the ability to build relationships with people that who maybe didn't even want to have a relationship with her. So I think that is her strength. But I don't know. What did you think, Lakeisha?
I thought the very same thing. No matter what adversity she faced in office, whether it was due to race or whether it was just due to the nature of the way society was when Barack was elected to office, she always rose above the situation and seek to build those relationships, as you said, to let everybody know. I think one of her quotes, and I'm gonna kind of share as we go forward in the PowerPoint, is when they go low, we go high. And I think she kind of lived by that.
I do too.
Just looking at some different things that she did. Of course, she first caught the eye of the nation by always making sure she was steadfast in making sure that she wanted everyone to understand that people inspire her, they make her proud, and that she was always trying to make sure that she move people to be better people, and no matter what the situation. So on the campaign trail, she used that as a platform to help her husband in making sure that he was successful. And she also had a knack for delivering relatable stories about her family to make people know the importance of building relationships and being successful and looking within to become the better person.
We lost your sound, Dr. Stone, if that's what you're asking. We can't hear you. Or Lakeisha, I can't hear anybody.
Can you hear me, Ms. Whitehead?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. But yeah, we've lost Dr. Stone. I apologize for sounding so scripted, but it's kind of hard when I'm not clicking because I'm kind of trying to make sure that I read what's on the screen and try to stay on task. Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, everyone, I think he's ended the session. So